Hey, everybody. If you listen to the main episode this month, then you know we've already talked about society's timeline, that invisible schedule that tells you when you should be promoted, when you should have your life all figured out, and what a successful life is supposed to look like by a certain age. And today I want to go a little bit more into the personal side. Where it shows up is at family gatherings or family dinners, and it shows up in the parking lot after school pickup. It shows up in the question that you have answered 100 times. You know the one. So, when are you having kids? Or are you going to have another one? Are you still with so and so? Are you two getting serious? Or for women who made a deliberate choice not to have children, but don't you want them? Oh, you'll change your mind. Now, these questions are not innocent curiosity, they are a timeline. Wearing a smile, holding a glass of wine at a family gathering. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop letting them trigger you and land the way they do, that causes upset, frustration, and self doubt. So, here's what makes these questions so exhausting and triggering for some. And it's not the question itself, it's what the question implies. So when someone asks you, when are you having kids? They're not asking you about your reproductive plans. they're communicating to you, whether they mean it or not, that you are at a stage of your life where the question is the logical next step, and that they are entitled to know what your plan is to get there. And even when we know intellectually, clearly, and completely that our choices are valid and that our path is just that, ours, and we don't owe anyone an explanation, the question still lands, and it can still bother us, and it still stings, sends us home, replaying the conversation of the night, second guessing ourselves, and feeling some shame about the life that we may actually love. And so, this timeline, what it's doing is working on us. And it is remarkably effective, even on women who have done the work. They may have gone to therapy, they have done life coaching, they've done tremendous work on themselves, and it can still sting when we don't expect them to. So, here's why these questions have so much power. We have been taught from a very young age that the people who love us are entitled to weigh in on our choices. And in many cases, that is true. The people who love and care about us, they do have genuine concern. But caring about someone and being entitled to someone's life plan is two different things. And somewhere along the way, that line between the two has gotten blurry. And so we talked about in the main episode empowerment, the Ian prone to power. And in that context is really about reclaiming the boundary between what you owe people in your life and what you do not. Now, we owe them our love, our presence, our honesty, and things that directly involve them. However, we do not owe them a timeline. We do not owe them a justification of our choices. And we do not owe them an answer to a question that was never theirs to ask. Now, the empowered response to the timeline question is not anger. And it's not a lengthy explanation where we start over explaining our choices. Rather, it should come from a place that is calm, warm, and a complete redirect that communicates, I've handled this and it's not up for discussion. It's not a wall, but it's a door that's simply closed. Now, you may say, Sakola, that sounds all well and good, but when you're in the moment and you're caught off guard, what do you say? So let me give you some love language, because It is one of those situations where having the words or phrases already in mind and in advance can make all the difference. And so when the questions do catch you off guard, you default to either shutting down or over explaining. And neither one of those feels good for you or for me. So I'm going to give you three scenarios and three possible responses to have ready, depending on the situation and the relationship. So let's start with scenario one. You may have a well meaning friend or relative who may ask you something about kids, right? Or a relationship. One response that you could start off with, coming from a calm, warm, but firm, loving place, is, that is something that my spouse and or I am really at peace with. And I appreciate you asking. So, what's going on with you? This response does three things. One, it closes the door on the topic warmly, and it signals that you are not in distress about it. And it also immediately redirects the conversation. Now, the redirect is key because it's not rude, it's just a pivot. And most people, notice I said most people, follow it. Okay. But sometimes we have relatives and friends who are persistent, pesky, and persistent, right? Because that initial redirect doesn't always work. And they want to push back and they want to dig a little bit deeper. So, in cases like that, you could say, hey, I know you mean well, and I love you for it. But this is one of those things I'm not really open to discussing. Tell me about Sally's first year in kindergarten. Now, this one's a little firmer, but it's still warm and it names the dynamic without making confrontation. Now, the phrase, I'm really not open to discussing it, is a power move because it's not apologetic. It's simply a statement of fact. You're not lying. It's not open for discussion. And you don't have to be rude about it. You can just say, I'm really not open to discussing that. Tell me and redirect again about something that's going on in their life. Now, finally, for the person who implies that your choice is wrong or that you'll change your mind in the future, you could have a response ready that simply says, hey, I actually really feel good about where I am. And I know that might be hard to understand, but I promise you, I am okay. Now, this one, for the moments when the question carries subtle judgment. We have our family members and our friends who can be judgmental. And now it's important to phrase it to say, hey, I'm really good about where I am in my life. And I know that's hard to understand, but I promise you I'm okay. It doesn't engage in the judgment that they're making. It simply states your reality with confidence, warmth, and it leaves no opening for debate. And so the goal with all three of these is not to be cold or dismissive. The goal is to be calm and so settled and so clearly at peace with your own life. That question simply has nowhere to land. Not with them and not with you. So here's what I want you to take away from today. The questions are going to keep coming. People are going to bring them up. The timeline doesn't retire or go away just because you decided to delete it in your life. But you do get to decide how much power those questions have over you. And that power diminishes significantly when you have thought through your response in advance, when you are genuinely and deeply settled in your own choices. If you've already made up your mind about your life and where you want it to be, you should be able to communicate that with warmth and confidence. And you don't have to justify your life to your mother, to your colleagues, to the woman in the after school pickup line who seems to have everything together and all figured out. Your path is just that. It's yours. Your timing is yours. And the only person whose opinion of your timeline actually matters is the one looking back at you in the mirror. And so if you want to go a little bit deeper on building that kind of settled, unshakable confidence in your own choices, the kind that makes timelines roll right off rather than land and stick in your mind and heart, my book, Harmony Hustle for Women, Master the Art of Thriving in Life and Career, is a good place to start. The link is in the description and show notes below. Thank you for taking time with me today, and I will see you next time. In the meantime, continue to work it, live it, own it in your everyday lives. Take care.